You are listening to Meet the Thriller Author. I am your host, Alan Petersen, and each episode of this podcast will introduce you to a new author in the thriller, mystery, and suspense genres. As a reader, I've been a fan of those type of books for a very long time, and that is why I write in that genre now, and so I'm excited to introduce you to new authors. Discovering new books and authors is such a fun thing to do, and that's what I hope to do with these interviews. So stay tuned for the next episode of Meet the Thriller Author.
Hey everybody, this is Alan Petersen with Meet the Thriller Author, and today I'd like to welcome best-selling and award-winning author Danielle Girard to the podcast. Hello Danielle, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Alan. Thank you for having me. It's fun to be here.
Oh no, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. It's really exciting. For our listeners who aren't familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your books?
Absolutely. I published my first book 100 years ago. Actually, not quite, but in 2000 I was 29. I published with Penguin Putnam for 5 books, and then did a few books on my own. I have 4 standalone books first, and then I have a 5-book series called The Rookie Club, and then most recently I've got the beginning of a new series which features medical examiner Annabelle Schwartzman. All my books are set in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where I grew up, still my favorite place on earth. My novels are gritty, I've been told. People compared my first novel to Silence of the Lambs, but I had to leave in the middle of that movie, so I'm not really sure if that's a fair comparison or not.
And did you leave because you didn't like it or because it freaked you out?
Oh, I was terrified. It was the scene, it was the scene where he's in the, not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but he's in the jail and he's cut that guy's face and put it on his own, and I was I'm done. I can't watch anymore. It's too scary. But the first book I ever wrote was about a serial killer, and people did make that connection. But I think I think I'm not nearly that dark. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, I'm reading Exhumed right now, and it's been great. I live in San Francisco, so not only is it a great thriller, but I love reading books that are set here because then it's like, oh, cool, this is here and there.
Yeah, exactly. Some places that are familiar. I try not to use anybody's real address. I think I might get in trouble if somebody was like, wait a minute, that's my house where that happened. So, but I do love that. That's my favorite city. So.
And so why did you start writing thrillers? Is that something you were a fan of before you started writing them?
Well, I guess as a kid I read Nancy Drew and then Agatha Christie, but I didn't know I was going to write suspense novels. I actually started out and spent some time in finance. When I'm the first of 4, and writing books was not an acceptable career choice. I was allowed to be in business or medicine. So I went to Cornell University and was pre-med with a minor in Italian. And then I spent some time in finance. I met a woman when I was working in finance, actually in Cincinnati, Ohio, who was a romance writer. And I was so enthralled with the fact that she'd published books, and I thought she was so cool. And so she sort of encouraged me to just start a book. And this was when I was young, newly married. We didn't have very much money, so sitting at a computer was a good way to, spend the time. On page 5, somebody died, and when I showed the book to my friend, she said, "Well, you're not writing romance." And that was just it. After that, I think I love the adrenaline. I love the sense of things come down to life and death because I don't think that there's any greater stakes. And I'm a real fan of law enforcement. I don't have law enforcement in my family, and I know it's such a complicated time to be in law enforcement and to talk about law enforcement. But I think it's an incredibly difficult job. I think every day, going out there and not knowing what's going to happen and who you're going to run into. I just have a lot of respect for the people that do that. Like I do for soldiers and that kind of thing. And I'm not brave enough to be that person, so I sit in the basement and write about them.
Yeah, that's the fun part. Yeah, no, it's such a tough job. They have to, especially the police officers, they have to be like social workers and psychiatrists, psychologists. It's like crazy.
A little of everything, exactly.
Yeah. And so, where do you get your ideas for your books?
Well, That's a good question, and they come from different places. The idea behind Savage Art, which is my first book, that story is about an FBI profiler who was attacked by the serial killer that she was profiling, and she left the D.C. area and comes to San Francisco to get better, really, to be sort of nursed back into health. And one of the thing that happened to her when she was attacked by the serial killer, who sort of considered himself Leonardo da Vinci, was he dissected her hands, so she didn't have the use of her hands, and of course that means she couldn't be a police officer, right? I mean, she can't hold a gun or a pen or zip up her pants or anything. But I had read about this at the back of the New York Times Magazine. They always profile sort of a person, and I had read one of those at the back of one of those magazines about a police officer who had been injured in a car accident, and it had left him without the ability to use his right hand, which was, of course, his shooting hand. And there was something about that really sort of spoke to me about what do you do when that is not just, of course, your vocation, but it's your love and your passion, and it's taken away from you. So for me, that was sort of the question that started the story that became Savage Art. And I like to think that's the way the books start, is there's just a little seed of who the character might be and what situation might be the sort of most complicated and challenging for the protagonist. And every book features, even the series actually, each book features a different lead protagonist, a different lead woman in law enforcement. Every book, I mean, Annabelle Schwartzman in the new book is a medical examiner, but before that, every protagonist is actually in law enforcement. And so it's really interesting to me to sort of take the psychology of the person, mate them with the psychology of a situation, a crime, where you can get kind of the biggest thrill and the most intensity and drama, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you mentioned that you have gone to a pre-med. Did you find any of that find its way into Zoom, this new series with Dr. Annabelle Schwartzman?
Well, I mean, when you're pre-med, you learn more about chemistry than you do about medicine.
Okay.
So no, but maybe having an affinity for the sciences has helped me. Certainly, there's a ton of research that goes into writing about a medical examiner, and I'm going to make mistakes. Hopefully they get caught before we go to publication. But I definitely I have a bunch of medical research people that I can access. I don't yet have a medical examiner, and that's probably what I need to find, is somebody who can really answer some very, I like to have these really out there questions about how would this person die if these things happened. And regular doctors are sometimes look at me like I'm a little strange. I think a medical examiner would probably be able to play along, but in the meantime, I do think I have an interest in medicine. My father was a physician, and my uncle's a physician, and there's some physicians in our family. So I love the medical aspect. I think it's something new, and it adds a different perspective to the whole question of law enforcement and catching the bad guy.
And do you ever base any of your characters on real people or on yourself? Did your personality end up finding their way into your books?
Well, I think probably, it does. Like I said, I'm the opposite of most of my characters in terms of being able to be brave enough to confront these types of situations. But I think I try to write about women who are, like myself, sort of both strong and also vulnerable and not as strong in some areas of our lives. I think that's not true of just women. I think that's true of all of us. I think everybody is a series of contradictions that makes us human. So I've never actually looked at a person in my life and said, oh, I'm going to base a character on that. But for sure they're all sort of composites. You see somebody on the street who does something strange and you think, I'm going to use that in the book. Or, you have somebody in the neighborhood who's a little nosy and you think, I'm going to use that person in the book. There's those kinds of things for sure. They sneak in.
And do you find is there a difference between writing you have several standalones and the series? Do you find a difference between writing a book that you know is going to be part of a series versus a standalone?
Yeah, I think in the beginning I couldn't imagine writing a series. I felt like it took so much to create a character and get her through whatever was happening to her, and then at the end I sort of was like, okay, now I want to get divorced and find somebody new to spend a year with. So I love those characters. I actually brought the main character of the fourth standalone, Cold Silence, is actually the protagonist of Interference, which is the Rookie Club book number 4. She's not the main protagonist in Cold Silence, so she gets her big book in Interference, if that makes any sense. But I think I took some maturity as an author to sort of realize when you do a series, you have to think not just about a story arc and what will this character accomplish and how will she change and grow in this book. You have to think about how will this character change and grow over a lot of books. And if you're starting like I am with Exhume, I don't know if this is a 5-book series. I mean, I think, Patricia Cornwell's on book 23 of the Kay Scarpetta books. I mean, I think Sue Grafton's gone all the way through the alphabet, and I'm not sure if she started again. So it's hard to know, how big that arc will be. So you have to be able to think bigger, broader, longer term. And I'm not sure I could have done that when I wrote those first 4 books.
Yeah, because the books, even though they're part of the series, though, each one is like their own little, it's sort of like a standalone, right? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
You have to satisfy the reader at the end of the book, or try, that's always, of course, a trick. You can never satisfy everyone. But you try to satisfy the story that's within that book, but also leave open some things that will pull the reader into the next book. And so it's a different beast.
Well, it sounds like you're satisfying a lot of people because Exhume is doing incredibly well. What is it? Pre-order is already top 5 in all of the Amazon stores.
It's been really fun. Thank you. That's really exciting. It's my 10th book, so you think it's been a long time coming. I hope people love it. I hope reading Exhume helps them discover some of my earlier stuff too. So I'm super excited. I have an incredible publishing team behind me who really believed in the book, and it's really what it takes nowadays is not just a great book, but an incredible support system, because it's as it's hugely competitive, and there's a lot of really, really great books out there.
Yeah, there's a very exciting time right now, and you used to go into both worlds, right? You've published on your own independently, and you've gone to big publishing houses as well, right?
Yeah. So exactly. I published those first 4 books, the first 4 standalones, and then the first Rookie Club book, which actually originally was titled The Rookie Club and is now called Dead Center. And at the time, Penguin Putnam wasn't interested in the Rookie Club that way. They were looking maybe for something with a little bit more romance, and I'm afraid I'm really not a romance author in any way. I don't everybody says, sex sells, and I'm like, I know, I've heard that, but it's not my thing. So I took the Rookie Club series back. I actually went back and got my MFA. I did that, which was an incredible experience, kind of weird as a genre writer to get an MFA. But it was such a great experience to learn how to write. I mean, as I said, I was not a writer undergraduate. I had one creative writing class, which I loved, but that was sort of all I could fit in with the curriculum I was doing to try to go into medical school and that. So I went back, got my MFA, and then I published, the next 4 Rookie Club books on my own. And I had some help with the publicity of those, because I really, really don't want to be the person who sells my books. I just want to be in the basement writing them. So I had some help with that. But then I started this new series with Annabelle Schwartzman, and my husband, who always will take credit for the good ideas, and sometimes they belong to him. He said, really, if you ever are thinking about getting back in traditional publishing, wouldn't the first book in the series be the time to send it out? And I thought, oh, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. So I reached out to an agent who I have loved and respected for 20 years, and who rejected me very kindly 20 years ago when I started in the business. And she she took me on, and she helped find Exum a home, a lovely home at Thomas and Mercer, and he gets a lot of kudos for that decision. He did a good job.
It worked out then, right?
It worked out really well, right, exactly. He gets blamed probably if it didn't, but no, he gets credit on that one for sure. So, yeah, it's been so much fun. In fact, I was at VoucherCon this past weekend, which is you probably know, the world's largest mystery convention. And I haven't been in 12 years. It was in New Orleans this year, and it was really fun, a really fun time to come back. My book's not out officially yet. It's not out till October 1st, so there's no pressure to be on a panel, no pressure to sign books. I just got to go and see some old friends and, have lunches with my editors and my agent, and it was really, plus it was New Orleans. How can you say no? It was so fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a cool city.
It's a wonderful city.
And so what is your writing process? Are you an outliner? Do you plot or?
So, I'm working right now on Excise, which is the second book in the Dr. Schwartzman series. And so I'm thinking a lot about my process. It changes a little bit every book. I used to be I used to write really in order of the book. So I felt like I had to sort of know, I can't write what happens later in the book unless I know what happens right now. And that isn't as true anymore. I use Scrivener. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a software I was hesitant to start on because I felt like I knew words so well, and I didn't want to have to relearn something. And I feel like I'm too old to relearn new tricks. But it's actually been wonderful because there's a lot of things you can do in terms of dragging scenes around, and it gives you places to kind of storyboard. And so I wouldn't say I outline. I would say I have a few really big scenes in mind for the book with some sense of sort of who did it and how it will resolve. And then I write towards and around those. So if I get stuck somewhere, then I try to pick up where I think it's going to leave off. And of course, you have to, once you get it all as one, massive piece, you have to do a lot of fixing to finesse those transitions. But that's basically what I do. I try to write, my real goal with writing is to write 1,000 words a day, every day. Because I think if you take a day off, it's that much harder to get to it the next day. And if I write 1,000 words a day and get to about 110,000, and then I cut, 15 to 20% of that goes away, then I usually end up with, about the right thing.
Yeah, it's like the sweet spot right around there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter. And then sometimes my editor will help by saying, you don't really need this scene. So that happens at the end. But the consistency for me has really been key. And I know, I've read Stephen King on, his book called On Writing. And of course, so Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And a lot of people talk about that consistency and just really just working on it all the time. And I do think for me, if I write 1,000 words a day at least, and sometimes, you get lucky and you have a day where it's amazing and you write 1,500 or 1,800 or 2,000. But the story then, when I'm home with my kids at night and I'm making dinner and doing dishes, the story is sort of building in the back of my head, so that when I go to bed, I might write down a few notes about what I think is going to happen tomorrow. And that just makes it so much more fluid. And once you have the fluidity, it's so much easier because nothing's harder than a blank screen.
And do you write usually in the same spot, or do you switch it around?
Well, I have a beautiful office, and it is in the basement, which sounds funny, but it has windows, and and I look out into the yard, and it's pretty quiet down here unless somebody's bouncing a basketball in the living room. So I like this place. But yes, I do. I have a laptop and then a monitor, and so a lot of times the office is filled with other things that have to get done, bills to pay and doctor's appointments to, arrange and that kind of thing. So I just unplug the laptop and I'll go to somewhere else in the house. I sometimes write in a coffee shop. I know a lot of people do that. I get really distracted. It works if I'm really deep into a book, but if I'm starting a book like I am right now, I really need to be where it's quiet, and I get distracted only by things like laundry and dishes.
Do you listen to music, or is it like really nice and quiet?
No, it's really nice and quiet. Unless I'm somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm amazed, actually. So, I mean, I can listen to sort of like monk music, you know, like the kind of stuff that you get in a massage to or something, but I can't listen to music with words. I feel like that would mess me up. But I know obviously tons and tons of people do it, and some can't do it without. So everybody's a little different, I guess.
Yeah, I guess whatever works. Yes, I would get distracted sometimes too if I was trying to listen to music. Like, oh, that's such a great song.
Exactly. Yeah, let's Google what that guy's doing now. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
When was his last album out? What does he look like now? Wow, he looks old. You know, I mean, it's just
2 hours later.
Yeah, down the rabbit hole, exactly.
What are some of your influences as a writer? Do you have any authors that you like could point to and say, oh, that's he or she? Yeah,
I mean, I think. I have most of my reading is more literary. I find, you know, it's not been always true. Certainly when I started out, I read a ton of mystery and suspense just to understand the genre and the idea of red herrings and how stories, you know, developed and where the reveals were. Now, because I just have read so many, and also because I feel like it's a distraction to read somebody else's mystery when I'm trying to plot my own. I sometimes feel like, oh my God, wait, was that my idea? Did I get that from somebody else? And so I don't read as much as I did. But you know, I still love. I mean, you know, my favorite authors in the genre world are John Connolly. If you're not familiar with him, he's an Irish author whose Charlie Parker series is set in Maine, and he's, I think, brilliant and also an incredibly kind person. I guess I'm somewhat also influenced by people that I know personally, so that doesn't always make it easy. But in terms of other people, Lisa Gardner is wonderful. She writes a great story. Harlan Coben, Lee Child writes a really quick, fast twister. Those are fun to read. Karen Slaughter, Michael Connolly, of course. I mean, you know, all the big guys. Alistair Burke is great. James Lee Burke is great. So, and in terms of, you know, literary, my favorite books of all time is actually Philip Roth's American Pastoral, because he has this whole little section where he talks about how people just don't know themselves. You know, we can't understand each other because we don't really even know ourselves. And there's something really interesting about identity in that book in general, and also in that passage, that I think is part of the reason I write is, you know, these characters are going through something to figure out who they are, and maybe by them going through it, I can figure out who I am. But, you know, that has had a big influence on me too. And that's always, I think, at the center of my books.
And do you find when you're writing, do you like, especially that you have a couple of series going on right now, do you like jump back and forth between the Rookie Club and Dr. Schwartzman, or you just focus on one?
Well, I'm usually focused on one at a time. At least, you know, for these first, in the beginning of a book is really hard. I can sometimes do revision on another book while I'm working on a book. But writing two books side by side, I have tried that, not hugely successfully. I do have another book that would be a standalone that I'm sort of working on in the shadows of this second book. It was an idea that came to me and it kind of won't let me go. So Excise is at the forefront of my mind, and certainly it's getting my 1,000 words a day are on that. But I'm working on this other sort of untitled thing at the same time, but not every day. So I just don't feel like I can do probably justice to either of them if I worked on both. But it's there, and it's hard because I'm going to finish Excise. It's due in January, and then, you know, have to figure out, you know, what book is next. So I'm hoping to kind of inch this other book along so that if I have a month or two early next year, I can really know where I'm going at least with it, and potentially finish it. We'll see. It's a little different than anything I've done. So,
is it still in the thriller?
It is, yes, absolutely, still a thriller. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I wouldn't even know what a plot was without a dead body, Alan. I'd be lost. So yeah, I think that it is in the genre, but it's a little different, and it's been fun. It's fun to try something different. And who knows, next year we might talk in a year, and I'll be like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. That book has been wiped from existence.
Never happened.
Exactly, it's never happened.
So how many books do you publish a year? Do you have a goal or?
I'd love to get to the point where I can publish 2 a year. Right now I'd say it's more like every 9 months. And it's a little slowed down now because, when the process of getting a Zoom out, if I'd gotten it out on my own, it would have been out last year. And instead, it's out this year. But they're looking at publishing Excise in the summer of next year. So that would be kind of more or less 9 or 10 months. I still have kids in the house. They're in high school, so it's getting easier. I do imagine, when they go to college, there'll be longer days. So right now my day really kind of hard stops at 3, which means, between the time they go to school at 8:30 and 3, there's just not enough time to really work on 2. But I think, I'd like to, ideally this other book that I might finish may put me in a position where I would have, sort of something else to do so that I'm doing 2 a year or getting closer to doing 2 a year. That would be really wonderful, 2 a year. But that might be a stretch for me. I'm not sure.
And what's your research process like? Because your books are very detailed. There's a lot of, like I said, I've been reading Zoom, and you seem to really do a lot of research for your work.
Yeah, thank you. I do. I know there's people come in on all sides of research. I know Lisa Gardner is she could really research for 3 years to write a book. And Harlan Coben says he doesn't research anything. He just puts asterisks in where until the very end, and then he fills in whatever he needs. I'm definitely somewhere in the middle, particularly about things that are technical, like how somebody died or, how a body would present but in general, I mean, if I'm going to talk with any authority about, part of the book is set in Charlotte, North Carolina, Exhumed. That's the first time I've set, a big part of a book in somewhere other than the Bay Area. And so I spent some time there, and I have some wonderful resources down there where I can call and say, can you take a picture of, what's between that street and that street? And, a lot of it you can get on Google Earth. You can do some things with that. But I beg, steal, and borrow from friends and colleagues and people who are in other places. I mean, I know for my book Dead Center, there was something that came up with the soil that you find in San Francisco, and so I was fortunate enough to stumble upon a soil expert at UC Davis, and I called and left a message and said, "This is going to sound crazy, but I'm this author, and I have a question about how you would differentiate soil in this area versus this area," and he called me back, and it was so helpful. We emailed back and forth, and he gave me exactly what I needed. And, and it's fun I think a lot of people think it's fun. If they don't think it's fun, they usually don't call you back, which is absolutely their prerogative. But if they do think it's fun, people like to apply their science or their art to something a little different. So they're usually pretty willing to help, which is really wonderful because, you can't be a soil expert and a guns expert and a, medical expert and, it's just not practical.
Yeah, that's good advice. Just reaching out and picking up the phone and calling somebody is amazing sometimes how that works out pretty in a great way. It does.
I'm not always very confident about it. I'm always a little but I managed to sort of stumble my way through an introduction, and then, and people have been really super generous with me. And I am hugely grateful, and I thank them in the acknowledgments, and then make sure I carefully say every mistake in the book is on me, not on them. They gave me the right thing, and then somehow I messed it up.
And your book covers are really amazing. That's the first time I kind of saw you when I was cruising around. I was on House covers. Just wanted to mention that. But I love looking at book covers. So
thank you. Well, I have had now a few book covers on some of those books because they were they were originally published by Penguin Putnam, and when I got the rights to them back, you don't own the right to the cover. So there's I had great help from a company called Streetlight Graphics, and Glendon there he's really brilliant with the look, and he did the standalones, so they look all sort of similar, and then he did the 5 Rookie Club books, so they look all similar. And then, of course, Thomas and Mercer did Exhume, and that one's really phenomenal. I mean, I think it looks like a big book. So
yeah, it's still keeping with your branding though. So it has the same across all your books. So it's kind of nice that Thomas and Mercer kind of kept the same branding going.
Yeah, we got kind of lucky. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a big change for you on that one.
Yes. Yeah. But it actually, I mean, they, and I had this experience at Penguin Putnam too. They want you to love your covers. So they were really, they send you a few examples, and then you say, I like this one more than this one, and what can we do? It feels a little quiet, or, those kinds of things. So, and it's, one-word titles are really fun too, because I think except for interference, that is potentially the longest word that should be ever on a cover. And, so if you think about one-word titles, go short is my advice, not long. But aside from that, I think it's fun. You can make things a lot bolder when there's not as much, when there's not as many words on the cover.
And what keeps you going, writing these stories and putting out these works? I'm sorry.
Say the question again.
Like what keeps you going? What's the motivator to keep writing and putting these books out?
Oh, there's that voice in your head, I guess. I did take a break. I took a year off from writing. My kids were kind of small, and I felt like I needed to devote that time to them. But I think it's kind of a disease, writing. It's its own form of addiction. I'm addicted to chocolate, which I've tried also to give up, but I never gone a year without that. And I'm definitely addicted to writing. It makes me a happier person. I think my family will say, if you're not killing somebody in the basement, you're really grumpy. So, and I think that's true. It's it's something. It's part of my identity now, and when I couldn't do it with Penguin Putnam, I found another way to do it, and now I'm doing it in even a different way. It's something I want to do until I saw R.L. Stine this weekend at BoucherCon, and he's got to be 80, is he 80, late 70s? So I want to be like that. I want to be doing it a long, long time.
Yep, you're going till the end.
Exactly. So I fall asleep in the middle of a grisly murder scene.
Yeah.
And don't wake up.
So now we do have some aspiring writers that listen to this show. So before I let you go, I was wondering if there's any advice that you can give to aspiring writers.
Absolutely. I have so been there. Well, first off, I should tell you, I have 1,000. I have 175. I was going to say 200, and somehow 1,000 popped up in my head. It feels like 1,000 rejection letters, but I have 175. Maybe it's up to 79 now. Rejection letters in a accordion folder in my drawer here in my office, and I just need to open it and look at them to remind myself that the only way you'll never become a writer or a bestseller is to quit. You have to write, and you have to write when people tell you that you're terrible, and when people tell you that you should go get a day job or don't quit your day job. And I wrote with a day job for most of my career. I quit my day job about 2 years ago. So my first book was out in 2000. So 14 years I wrote, and worked and had kids. So I know it's a really hard thing to do. I didn't write 1,000 words a day for sure. But I wrote every day a little, even if it was scrawled, in the lunchroom at work. And, I think there's a lot of really good books on writing. I think I prefer the books on writing than I do the conferences. I think conferences are a good way to meet other writers and to pitch with agents and to try that. But I think you get more bang for your buck by, spending time with books on writing. And actually books on screenwriting, have always been a really good way for me to kind of learn about story. In fact, I think Robert McKee's book is called Story. I still have these books right here beside me. I've got one called Creating Unforgettable Characters, Making a Good Script Great, 20 Master Plots. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. Writing fiction. Anyway, I have a million books. And then reading, a lot of the kind of book you want to write, because I just think it helps you understand, again, story, character, how those things come together and work off one another. So it's not an easy business. It's, I hope maybe I'm at a point where it's going to get easier, but you never know. I'm certainly not going to count on it not being, there'll be another rejection down the line, I'm sure of it. So, those are my thoughts on that. I really just urge people to not quit. If it's something you really, really want to do it. And if you don't, and then on the flip side, it's not, it looks romantic. It's not that romantic. It's as grueling as, you could be tiling a bathroom, and feel like you're accomplishing a lot more than I do in a day. So, if you don't love it, God, find something you do, because if it doesn't grab you by the throat and hang on, I don't think it's even among the 1,000 most fulfilling jobs. But if you love it, it's worth it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the show, and your book and Zoom. I'll have links on the show notes for people, and to your website as well. So they can pick it up. But this is probably by the time I post this, maybe it'll be number one by then.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's hoping. That would be wonderful. I'll let you work your magic, Alan. Well, I appreciate you having me, and I know I talk so fast, so I hope I didn't babble on too much. But let me know if you need anything more from me. But thank you. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much.
You take care, and good luck with your writing.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Meet the Thriller Author. I'd like to ask you to please rate and review this podcast over on iTunes. It only takes a few seconds, and it really helps me get the word out about the podcast. I would really appreciate that. And you can visit my website at thrillingreads.com/podcast. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can do so from there. You can do it on iTunes. You can do it with Stitcher. You can do it on Android. The RSS feed is there, so make it very easy for you to subscribe to this podcast. And you can also join my mailing list from the website. And I've actually been getting some pretty cool offers for listeners. So if you want to get a great deal on a thrilling read, you can join the mailing list over at thrillingreads.com/podcast. And you'll get I'll let you know about these great offers that I've been receiving that I can pass on to you. And please visit my website, my author website over at alanpetersen.com. And you can download my best-selling thriller, The Asset, for free from there. Thank you very much, and until next time.